a privilege for me to be here today. Very excited about this milestone, a historical moment indeed in Yes, she's the one that sort of. Okay, already. Your name is fine. Okay, 2 minutes, I'm gone.
I am Birchwood.
Yes, I've been looking for you. You've been running away from me, young lady. All right, there we go. So, you are from,
The DBE.
yes, HR. When did you move to DV?
1st of October last year.
You knew.
God was there. God was there. Not HR department, ECD.
ECD
Yes, it's all ECD. I'm just,
department from DV.
yeah. I think
And your
that's
role?
all. I'm a consultant.
Okay, let me leave
Yeah,
that.
leave
It's not
that.
necessary. Let's leave it
If,
here.
if they really want to know, they can
No.
come ask.
Well, they must ask me and I'll tell them. It's none of your business. Doesn't matter.
Like, even you do find out, it won't be nice.
True. Okay. I want to do a short one. Just the first part, introduction. Ne? All right, jump to sharp. Good afternoon, colleagues, partners, and stakeholders. My name is Gloria Nkosi. Okay, people are coming now. Good afternoon, colleagues and partners. My name is Gloria Nkosi from Hope Worldwide South Africa. I will be chairing this session this afternoon. It is a privilege to welcome all of you to this pivotal commission on ECD. We are all gathered here to shape the purpose and to engage in meaningful dialogue and develop practical strategies that will enhance access and elevate quality early childhood development. Thank you. So I just wanted.
So, let me tell you what can happen. So, but I'm only going to do the presentation and explain.
And then from there,
So, you understand. So, I didn't see this thing. Oh, this is you now. Okay, so what from Yellow Wheels. In fact, just a GDEPMN. Program Management Unit. That's PMU model.
I was about to ask.
Yeah. Program Management Unit.
Okay, so is it okay for me to say you provide benefits based on what you do?
I'm doing a bit of a presentation. Few slides. Few slides that will contextualize. Yeah. Because the thinking is that people should break into.
So can you give me your presentation picture?
I gave it to.
It's just a very Let's check, and then I'm Tshwanetse re di emele.
Tlisa,
Ke document tsa me.
o thukeng commission guide. Oh, this is commission to proceed. We've got the presenters, I get Zabu Pachai,
Another three.
and Chola, so we are rapporteur.
Marcia.
Marciane.
Let's just write Marcia. Give her Marcia. Let's go.
Yeah. So now, the only thing that's short is your commission guide.
Okay.
And I didn't even check the inside of what's going on inside, but they just didn't meet now.
So commission guide, it will be like now my everyone.
Actually, why didn't they give it to you in the morning or yesterday? I don't know. Why didn't they distribute? It's only now that I was told that
So it's all from who?
I transferred that from the office here. From where we are, from the winners. Yeah.
Okay, so let me tell Khulula and then
But I don't know. Then, because I apparently not.
it's telling me. Good afternoon, colleagues. We are about to start with our commission. If I can please ask us to settle, grab a seat. We are mindful of time. It's been quite a long day. Please let's settle down and get ready. Let's settle down. We start in the next 2 minutes. All right. Good afternoon once again, colleagues. I propose we open the commission. I know that some people are still caught up and hopefully they will get us before we get into more valuable information around the discussions at hand today. Good afternoon once again, partners and stakeholders. My name is Gloria Nkosi. I am one of the directors from Hope Worldwide, and I'm really grateful to be with you this afternoon. I will be chairing this vital commission this afternoon. I won't be doing it alone. I've got an incredible team of experts, and all of you sitting here being experts in ECD that are going to help us to really formulate and take this forward. I have our team of presenters that will be coming up and sharing the topics according to the agenda, the different sub-themes that we will be talking about. And also we have our rapporteur, Ms. Messi Fanny, who will be presenting and giving feedback tomorrow on whatever discussions would have been captured today. Ms. Fanny, you can just raise your hand. Can you clap hands for her? And then we have our scribe, Ms. Amolet Zitenga, who will be scribing for us today. And we are also grateful to have some of our leaders joining us, just recognizing Ms. Kulula Manona from the DBE. Thank you. And then also Dr. Yaneli Kotse from the ECD Directorate. Most importantly, I'd like to welcome all of you. Clap hands for yourself, please. Colleagues, this is a historical moment in the history of a South African child. ECD is now at a top priority in our country. As we've heard yesterday from our distinguished leaders in day one of the Lekgotla, His Presidency, Ramaphosa, Minister of Basic Education, Mrs. Kwahube, the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovations, Dr. Blade Mzimande. ECD is the foundation upon which basic education is built. It is the bedrock of a thriving society and a strong economy, and as such, it must be prioritized, quote unquote. We are very excited because this is the moment as ECD civil society, as parents, we have been waiting for this moment. So it is quite an exciting moment for the sector. With this in mind, just to inform you that our commission is focused on strengthening early childhood development to lay the groundwork for improved learning outcomes in later years for our early citizens, young citizens. Our ultimate goal is to fortify the social compact for ECD, fostering a collective commitment to expand access to quality early childhood development. As we embark on today's discussions, I urge all of you to take a forward-thinking approach, focusing on actionable solutions that will align our efforts with the sector's shared vision for ECD accessibility. We must define a clear measure of success, ensuring that every child in South Africa has access to quality early learning opportunities. Additionally, let us remember, that we are all in the same, we all have a same shared vision, and that we have quite a short time to actually have this session. So I'm urging us to respectfully engage in robust discussion that will build on putting children first and at the center as we build together. So we have a number of themes that we are covering this afternoon. The first theme will be presented by Mr. Teboho Chake, who is from DBE, the PMU, Program Management Unit. Teboho and his team will present about will give us valuable insights on increasing access through the Banapele mass registration, In this session, we aim to address quite a number of questions that are indicated already in our program. So to set the tone and the ground rules, please let's allow Tebogo to share the presentation, and he will then guide a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And from there, then we can engage with him, and then the next presenter will come through. Does that sound okay? Does that sound good? Awesome. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, without wasting time, Tebogo knows he's got 30 minutes. We spoke about it. Without wasting time, allow me to welcome our esteemed first speaker, Mr. Tebogo Chake.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Colleagues, so registration is probably the first step to achieving our ECD goals, particularly our 2030 goals. And I think there's a key initiative that has come out of this whole concept of social compacting. So understanding that the different stakeholders across different sectors coming together to collaborate in accelerating outcomes for ECD. We know that we particularly live in a country which is very much fond of children and their well-being. Probably is because of what we understand children to be mostly predisposed to. So, Banapele registration drive is a key initiative out of this social compact between NGOs, private sector, funders, implementation partners led by the DBE. So my role this afternoon is really to challenge everybody and understand that when we have beyond access, because Banat Bailey speak to access, but beyond access, all the other initiatives that we have to approach through the social compact, when we have to measure and assess impact of that, what does that look like? And I think there's the key challenge for today that I would like you to think about as I make this particular input this afternoon around this process. I will not take a lot of time, but we'll just share with you some of insights just around what Banapele ECD master registration really is about. So the biggest thing around access is to make sure that every young child in South Africa have access to quality ECD program. And I think we live, just reflecting on the ex-minister's reflection around this issue, is that in South Africa, we probably have strong partnership between parents and government, because most parents actually put money aside to ensure that a child is part of an ECD program. And our government probably contributes half to that. And I think that government wants to take this even a little bit more step further to say, with this strong partnership which has organically emerged, how do we still ensure that whatever center, whatever place that the child is located in, it is a safe environment, it complies to minimum norms and standards. That is as a government that we set in place for good running ECD programs. So so mass registration is the first step in making this particular objective possible. I mean, registration is nothing new in our country. We've for a long time been talking about registering ECD so that there can be some kind of monitoring that happens around. But what is different with what is being proposed through this vehicle, one is to make access to registration easier, simpler, with support. And it's very important that I emphasize with support. Because previously, ECD programs, because they mushroom everywhere randomly, so as a result, they feel like they're operating illegally because they are not, most of them are not registered. I mean, just to give you an idea, we have about 42,000 ECDs programs that we are aware of. with 22,000 of them probably in our books registered, and probably 20,000 and maybe beyond that we are not even aware of. So you can imagine those ECDs feel like they're operating illegally, and they are always scared that at any given time they could be shut down. And I think the opening access is a one way of ensuring that every child that attends an early learning center or an ECD program is accounted for in terms of us knowing where the child is, understanding the environment and the safety with which the child is exposed to. So those are very important things. So what Banapile Mass Registration Drive then is attempting to do is to make registration accessible through multiple pathways. So you'll see that through partnership with the private sector, we've created an online platform through which ECDs can register online. So there's no barrier that I must be in some office after 4:30, which is closed, and trying to get somebody to give me forms to register. So I can do it in the comfort of my center, in the comfort of my home, in the comfort of my office to be able to get registration going. But also we're looking at multiple channels. So we're looking at you can use a USSD number if you can't use technology. You can use WhatsApp. You can be assisted through WhatsApp. There's a contact center that can help you through the registration process, or you can actually do it on your own. But I think the most important, because we talk about this supported, assisted process, is that we work with implementation partners, NGOs that work in different districts in our country who are able to host submission and application clinics and help ECDs through the registration process. What is different also about Banapele is the fact that it really puts into practice conditional registration opportunities which are captured or which are part of the Children's Act. The Children's Act allowed MECs in the provinces to actually do conditional registration, so basically saying you can make the standards for registration realistic and attainable for ECDs, because we're talking about the entire landscape where ECDs don't operate in different environments, different circumstances, different dynamics. So we need to be able to cater for all of that. So not every ECD is going to operate in a formal structure, from the get-go. So those provisions in the Children's Act allows for us to be able to accommodate different conditions of these ECD, of these centers. And I think the third point, which is very important, which is I think is the center of what we're talking about today, is the fact that we are driving Banapele through the social compact-based implementation approach, which says government cannot do it on its own. Centers cannot do it on its own. Private sector trying to close the gap cannot do it on its own. So the partnership is that's where we can leverage this cooperation to get higher impact of registration, because what registration does gives us data, access to data, gives us opportunity to plan and be able to know how many children we need to plan for and accommodate. So I think there's a powerful thing around the fact that, and I have to emphasize this point, that the DBE as a lead driver for this Banapele is that they do not want to push this into the provinces and leave provinces to thrive on their own. We're saying with the support of the private sector, we will walk the journey together, and that is the essence of the implementation approach. So what does this Banapele registration process look like? I think yesterday we alluded, when we were part of the panel, we alluded to the fact that we're not trying to eat the entire elephant in its entirety at a go. The most important thing is that it's to invite ECDs into the safety net, is to bring them in so that we can know them, we can understand their conditions, we can understand their gaps, we can understand their limitations, and work with them to close those gaps so that they can meet minimum norms and standards. And I think what this approach, what the design of Banapele Mass Registration Drive has led to a 3-staged application process where you have the apply, where they get what we call a bronze recognition certification. This is initial conditional registration. It is not full registration. It's to acknowledge them coming into the system and to make sure that we understand who they are, where they operate, under what conditions they're operating, and how many children actually participate in those programs. Stage 2 is where we work with them and understand we have assessed them. We assess their readiness for full registration, and in this stage, we are able to help them comply. And this is what one of the game changers, because we do this in partnership with the private sector. And I think a key identifier, unique differentiator in this stage is the fact that we will assess different ECDs that register who are at different levels. Those that need some kind of support that can push them into meeting minimums registration standards, we will offer those support packs as the private sector together with government to make sure that they at least can meet registration requirements. And the last stage, which is completing registration, is that we will review and determine based on full review of all the information that an ECD would have submitted on an online platform and all the documentation, supporting documentation they would have provided. And we will assess whether they meet the new silver standard or the gold standard of operation as an ECD. So this really underpins our new registration process, which is staged. I think what is powerful and nice about this is that you come into the registration process through an online process, and our communication is going to be based on this online process. So when your application is not complete, we will notify you through this online process. You'll get notification messages. When it's complete, you'll get notification messages. When you need to proceed to the next stage, you'll get notification messages. So I think this is really a game changer. But once again, a lot of support. With support that needs to be provided to the ECDs to move through these stages. I included the next slide. My slides are not moving, sir. Let me just make sure that I'm pointing it. I included the next slide just to give you a sense of what beyond the new bronze registration that looks like, what that process looks like. One thing I like about tech. There we go. Thank you. So this just gives you a quick sense around beyond that bronze, because bronze is online. We don't do visitations, we don't do site visits, everything is online. And we make it very clear, because this is often a point of contention that people say, oh, but you have not come, you have not assessed these sites, we don't know how well they comply to the requirements. There's a declaration that ECDs have to make as part of this first step of application. 2, we validate and verify all the people that work on that ECD. So we need to get copies of their IDs so that we can verify them against the National Child Protection Register as part of the first step. In the second step, you'll see that for us to complete that registration, we will share with an ECD that is bronze registered a handbook with templates on documentation required. We will ensure there's a site inspection to verify compliance. They have to submit documents on an ECAS system, which is Early Childhood Administration and Registration System. And social workers have to do a review and determine the outcomes of that application. So that's really what underpins that step. Where are we to date with the bronze? So remember, we're taking it as a staggered approach. So we don't expect you to do the full 3-step at a go. We do bronze, that's what we focus on. So in terms of bronze, where are we as DBE in terms of implementing this? You'll see that we are live with registrations across 5 provinces. That's Gauteng, Northwest, Free State, Northern Cape, and the Western Cape. We have the remaining provinces all ready to go live. That doesn't mean ECDs can apply online if they're ready to apply online. They can apply online. The difference between those provinces that are not reflected here and the provinces that are on the slide is that provinces that I'm showing on the slide that have gone live, they can now review and approve applications online. The other provinces have been readied. They just need to go online, on live, where all the district officials are trained sufficiently to review and approve applications online. So one of the things that comes up with this online platform is that we have data, and this is really our game changer, that at a national level, at a provincial level, we can track registrations, because these are not files-based that can easily get lost. And when people resign, then files also disappear. We don't know where they are. This data sits on the system. So they come with powerful dashboards for management, for our partners to know. So for our partners, for instance, when NGOs assist with application clinics, we can give them reports around what is the outcome of those applications they've assisted ECDs with. And management can make decisions based on this. We can see resourcing challenges at a go. We can see where the system performance issues, we can pick it up based on the dashboards. So this is what comes with this that really empowers the districts and our partners. So, and these dashboards are real time, but what they allow us to do is that we can generate national reports, we can come up with provincial and districts views of registration for ECDs. We can do an analysis on the applications and approvals per districts, per province, and we can do trends analysis. So we can see where there has not been movement or action in a district or in a province. So that gives us powerful insights around where we are. My last slide to transition to why we are here today, which is really, this is supposed to be commission, supposed to be engaging and getting recommendations, is that through what I've explained, the DBE's targeted success with creating access through Banapili is really based on 5 thrusts. And the first one speaks to legitimacy and trust, that we would like to drive public education around the fact that you're legal when you are registered. So you are a legitimate operating ECD when you are registered. But we don't want this to deter people, so for them to operate illegally. We're saying we're open and inviting ECDs to come through so that we can work with them. And by the way, where ECDs are not compliant, districts will make necessary recommendations for them to either be shut down or for certain measures to be taken. So this is not a free-for-all. It is just to make sure that we create trust for parents that they are bringing children to safe environments where their children's learning is aligned to the DBE's standards. The second thrust is really around access to registration, that we offer simpler, user-friendly online registration with support, because we understand that there are areas in our country where you're going to have network issues and problems. You're going to deal with ECDs that are run by gogos who don't know how to operate WhatsApp. You will have in areas where there's no facilities to upload documents. And the third thrust is really around the fact that it must be this Banapili it must be compelling enough for provinces to say we would love to adopt it, because provinces do registration. The national DBE provides standards. So if provinces can be early adopters of mass registration drive program like Banapili, then we know that's what marks success for this. The fourth pillar is really sector partnership, that with partner support, not alone, with sector partners, we move every ECD to meet minimum compliance. And lastly, that the needs of the child are met, that every child has access to quality learning, safe and nurturing environment, and good nutrition. So from a DBE perspective, when we say Banapili Mass Registration Drive is being successful as an access point to ECD, it's based on those 5 key pillars. And I think this moves nicely into the next conversation where we want to explore the fact that we are represented here as different organizations from different sectors. Coming from different sectors, there's an agency that you carry. that gives you the mandate to operate. And based on that mandate, we're saying, what does that allow you to do to contribute to this social compact we speak about? So what is the agency that your role in the sector affords you towards this social compact? So that's number one. Number two is, how do you know when you are successful in positively impacting the social compact we speak about? Because Banapele is one of these initiatives, and that we count on all sector partners, but the many others that will come through to fulfill this 2030 vision. So that really is the core of our discussion, and I would like to invite inputs from the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tebo. Can you give him a round of applause again? Like Tebogo said, I think the main reason why we're here is to have those conversations, because we believe you guys are thought leaders. You are experts in ECD, and as he indicated, this is one of the programs within the 2030 strategy that the department is working on, and we are really excited to hear if there's any inputs on how the department can really ramp up on this amazing project. We definitely want to see every ECD center registered in our country, and government being able to know how many children are out there and which programs to bring, to support those programs. So I'm going to open it up for questions, comments, clarity. As I said in my opening, forward thinking. So we really want to come out of here with strategies to enhance what is already there, and also a way forward. So I'm going to note the hands that are raised, and then from there, Tebogo will be ready to respond. So just like the process in the plenary, if I say one, that is definitely your number. So I've noted you, sir, as number one, and you will be number two. Number three, that side, that lady. Sir, did I see your hand up? Yes, so you will be number four, and then over there, that will be number five. Please note the questions. Not just questions, also inputs. Inputs and comments, yes, absolutely. I think that is very clear. So there is a roving mic that will be going around. First question. Sorry, the mic seems, can you check if it's on? There's a green light. I think they're trying to.
Okay, we're on.
Awesome.
Good afternoon, everyone, thought leaders. It's great to be among you all. I want to start by just commending the DBE on this really revolutionary approach to registration. Bringing people onto the legislative fold is going to be bring a lot of impact. And also commend on the multiple methods that are being employed to do this work, given the different challenges we have in our country. My inputs are on 2 points. Did I introduce myself? My name is Tsepo. Sorry. My name is Tsepo Manjam from Equality Collective and Real Reform for ECD. 2 inputs. The first is with support and how we can strengthen that. What we find is that there's still, I think the social impact approach is working quite well, however, could be strengthened. And I recommend that we bring in local governments and municipalities to do some of that heavy lifting. Because NGOs are not everywhere in the country, but there's a local municipality everywhere in the country. So as we get provinces to adopt, then we get municipalities to implement. They have an opportunity to do road shows like they do with IDP and things like that, and call practitioners into one room. That's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is with regard to plugging into ECD forums. Working in the sector, we have found that ECD forums provide quite a good platform of collective action where practitioners have already grouped themselves. So what has worked for us is that we go into a community and we don't just call a community meeting for practitioners, but we go and investigate and map where are the forums and go to the forum meetings. So you will find that you will reach a lot more practitioners in forum meetings and going to where they are. And also linking those forum meetings with the local municipality. And I think more generally as the DBE, recognizing ECD forums as formal structures that we can use to plug into ECD communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Tepo, can we move to number 2? Thank you so much. You can go ahead. Please introduce yourself first and where you're from. Yes.
Thank you very much. Mandla Mabuza from the National Teachers Union. I wish to note and also to welcome the presentation, which actually provides a clear picture in terms of how far is the department in the migration of the grade or the ECD, and thank you so much about that. It is noted the 3 levels moving from the provisional registration and etc. But I am worried with the other provinces which seem to be behind. I wish to check how far are these provinces like the MP, KZN, Eastern Cape, and Limpopo, which were not part of the presentation. But one other thing that I wish also to check, I was happy when the presenter touched on the issue of having to check those people, those practitioners, in terms of whether they appear on the child protection register and all that, because that is very critical to us. But I would also wish that perhaps you can also touch on the issue of the skills audit to say, remember these colleagues were operating from every corner, and in terms of how far, in terms of the skills, how much skills do they have, and if there is a need for upskilling and training and all that, would want to know that as an organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Number 3, I think it was, yeah, Tladi.
Thank you, Program Director. My name is Letoteng Tladi, all the way from the Free State. Chairperson, it's more a comment. Let me start off by saying I've always been very worried that we are talking increasing access. And when we talk increasing access, we're talking the Banapele mass registration drive. Am I correct? I suppose. To the extent that we underplay the importance of the quality that we're talking about. Because we're talking mass registration drive, we want to ensure that each and every ECD that's operational is registered. I don't want us to be talking this increasing of access as if it's actually once you are registered, we're talking about quality ECD program. We need to begin to define that quality for all of us to understand it uniformly. All provinces, when we talk quality ECD programs, what are we talking about? I'm glad in the last slide you mentioned those 3 aspects. But I think we need to all agree, what are we talking about? Haribuaka quality. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. May we move to the 4th person, delegate. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. It's Peso from South African Congress for Early Childhood Development. I was looking at the guidelines of how we are going to resolve the challenge that we have. As a department, you had a target that you had to meet. And when I was looking at the dashboard, I could see very disturbing numbers. Now, my question is, yesterday when I had Ms. Tlobatla, they said they have, I think, 4,500, and half of them, they are already on the system. What can we do to adopt the model of Gauteng, what they have done correctly, so that other provinces, we can replicate what Gauteng did and continue? Because that's where the problem is now. You find the province has 30, what is it that we can do collectively as a sector? We said this is our resolution from this in terms of the challenge that we have in terms of match registration. Because we know, all of us, that local government is our challenge. Currently, that's the biggest challenge. They were supposed to be here. You know, when you get to Gauteng, they tell you about local government. You go to Eastern Cape, it's the same thing. And it keep on repeating itself year by year by year, and we end up toying us because of local government. It puts the whole department into disrepute because of they don't address the issues that concern the ECD. Can we maybe have a sort of endeavor on just local government, and we get the people that they report to, so that they can make a commitment that they will resolve this matter? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our last person for this round, number 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Dipole Lotema from Sanase. I'm taking the platform to actually speak on behalf of the most vulnerable. And I want to start by appreciating that platform because it looks like it's going to take us in the right direction. There is a particular group of children who falls under the category of the deafs. There is a gray area which is created by the relationship between a child who can't speak at home with the parents who are speaking. That create a language gap, language development gap in this child. And our ECD centers that are available do not necessarily have capacity to actually deal with these children through support by sign language. And hence they may not necessarily accommodate such children. So we want to propose that in the spirit of access for all and inclusivity, we could either encourage the centers to admit or to accommodate such children so that support will later come. But you see, encouragement may not necessarily result into, actions. So we want to also propose a counter suggestion that there are 44 schools for the deaf in the whole of South Africa. And those schools already have structures that have capacity to deal with this kind of support. So we would wish that if it were possible, we could have those schools also given a platform to start smaller ECD centers for these little ones with such disabilities in order for us to also have information about those children and be able to support and close that gray area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I've noted you. So this is obviously the first round. I will give you a chance to also ask. If we can please give Tebogo. So Tebogo won't be answering alone. I think Yaneli, you can come in, and colleagues, Mrs. Manona, you can also come in. But I think colleagues just appreciating the kind of comments. Clearly we have thought leaders in the room. What I appreciate is there's been a lot of comments and also with solutions, possible solutions to those, including the last point that was made. So thank you so much for those kind of engagement. Can I hand over to Tebogo to answer the questions?
So I will touch on implementation, rollout specific questions, and then I'll ask my colleague Yaneli maybe to speak to other issues. But thank you so much for the question. Tatetepo, I like your opening line around the support, that the fact that this is based on, it's founded on providing support to our ECDs and how we strengthen them together. I think I love the line that you used. And I think that for me presupposes that going forward, this is what underpins this partnership. You mentioned the issue of local government, very pointed. We didn't go into detail. So if you see stage 2 and stage 3 of the process, in fact, let me say this, when we start with stage 1, when you start engaging around inviting ECDs to come and use this platform, we start activating the municipalities within those districts. That's very important. So it's a big part of stage 2 and stage 3 that we have to partner with municipalities, because only them through their bylaws in areas where ECDs exist and are located, that they have to fulfill those requirements. So it's a big part of what we are doing. We have a team that looks after that. You're absolutely right. It's part of our strategy that municipalities do roadshows for the IDPs, and ECD should be one of the key things that is driven in that. So we're with you on that. ECD forums are a key part of our playbook around how we roll out mass registration drive. We understand two things. One of the biggest things that we want to do here with this program is to also improve efficiencies. It's not just about doing this, it's about improving efficiencies, and we don't want district officials bogged down in unnecessary administrative work. So, and the reason we're partnering is that where NGOs can assist, they're assisting with that. But I think the biggest part of you mentioning ECD forums is believability, credibility of the registration drive. If ECD forums, chairpersons, committees are aware of this and they can share information and update their members, makes it easy for them to adopt and take this on. So that is a big part of that. And in fact, there's a whole communication plan around the collateral that we share, that provinces actually share with the ECD forums, and they call them and brief them specifically around this issue. So thanks for highlighting that. I mean, you went on and mentioned a number of other things which are very important. Dr. Mandla, you mentioned quite a number of things, and you spoke about the skills audit. I'll ask my colleagues to speak about that. And Tate Tladi, you spoke about the quality aspect. I'll also ask Yaneli maybe just to speak on the quality aspect as well. And Tate Sfiso, you mentioned issues around the data models here. So I just want to correct something. So the other provinces is not that they are not committed to doing this. This is we're rolling this in a phased approach. So we're not rolling out blanketly to everybody at the same time. One, we have to look at the readiness of the province to be able to do this. And what does readiness mean for us? It means that the senior leadership in the province must own this. It means that the ECD teams in the provinces are driving this and DBE is not driving this. It means that NGOs that operate within the province and in those districts are fully onboarded and are aware as part of this particular process. It means that the ECD forums that are our partners and supporting with information on the ground are also onboarded. So it takes a whole process to get a province ready for this. So it's not just a matter of and also we have to understand that different provinces have got different needs, limitations, challenges, and all of that. So they have to figure out, in line with this rollout model, how they make up for some of the things that they don't have, for instance. And I can tell you right now, we've onboarded all provinces, including KZN, by the way, well rolled out in KZN, well thought out and all of that. So they are not behind, they are just doing it right. Right. And then I think, so in future we will see more data coming up in Tajesiso. In the dashboards and all of that. So we will see. So, and one of the things that we do is that already we're seeing with Gauteng, and I think you mentioned something very important maybe to replicate the model. We have a standard framework around how we're rolling this out. But I like your suggestion. Pumi needs to be out there and talking about how they got it right in a complex province like Gauteng. So absolutely. And you spoke about local government. I'll leave the rest of my colleague to speak about, yes, Yaneli, can I leave? I think some of the aspects that raised by Ntate Tema, just around the deaf, and I think my takeaway from what you said in Ntate Tema, access for all and inclusivity. Yeah, thanks. Yaneli?
On. Thank you. Just to add, I think, yes, 100% agree with the local government, and I think Teboho answered that well. On the question regarding the skills audit, the census we did in 2021, we collected information on each of our ECD practitioners, what's their skill levels, and that is being used in the Human Resource Development Task Team, and we'll speak about that in the next item. Should I just move this way? Just how do we build on that? Because that gave us a picture of what is the current situation, and that is giving us the base on how do we build to where we want to be. In terms of the question on quality, Ms. Manona will take that. And in terms of inclusivity, it's such a critical one. And we're seeing inclusivity as a cross-cutting theme in every single thing that we do. So how do we, in every project, every activity that we do, really bring that inclusive lens? And Khopotso in the third session will also speak about how are we empowering our practitioners to take more inclusive approaches. But I loved your recommendation on how can we stimulate or encourage the schools of the deaf that's currently there that have that skill set to also have ECD programs linked to them. I think that's a brilliant recommendation that we'll take forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me just plug into that question about quality. And I think what I'd just like to bring across to all of us is perhaps the way we see things is different. Sometimes the way we articulate what we want to articulate can be questionable. I think because I think that I think the diction is very important when we want to make particular points. I think the question or the statement that kind of preceded the question is a statement that has to be corrected, because that statement that says you're promoting access and you are underplaying quality is simply incorrect. And I think it's a statement I think we should not. We should be careful of making. The issue around access has been identified as the biggest threat to quality. I'm going to repeat. Over the years, access has been identified as the biggest threat to quality, because it is the pathway to quality. And when we're talking about access, we're not talking about access to early learning centers as a modality. We're talking about access to early learning opportunities wherever they are provided. So it's important as well, perhaps I'm not sure that people have had an opportunity to page through what the commission program looks like. It has been curated such that it's a battery, one of these cells leads on to the other. So we start with access because that's what we have to start with. We have to open that pathway to quality. Then we move on to the second segment, which addresses equipping practitioners with the right tools. Now we're getting straight into what quality should look like and how do you equip those who are charged with providing those quality experiences. The next segment looks at improving quality again, talking about well-supported ECD practitioners. What kind of support, what kind of professional development opportunities do you provide to them? So that is quality. So there's nothing that is being promoted at the expense of the other. It's all of these being approached in a holistic manner. So that's why I just felt because sometimes we may take this and sometimes things that shouldn't trend, they do trend. So I don't want it to trend because it would not be a representation of the truth. So thank you very much. So it's going to be addressed. But let's deal with quality, let's deal with access as well. But we won't have that quality if we don't address access. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Manona. Can we clap hands for everyone that has asked questions and the comments? We are taking our last round of questions for this sub-theme. I have noted you, ma'am, as my number one, and then you will be number two. Number three, gentleman at the back, will be our number three, number 4, and then number 5. Oh my goodness. 6, 7, 8. That's our last round of questions. Please, or comments or inputs, please get straight to the point because we're also looking at time as well. Okay, but we also want to make sure the engagements are meaningful and we get as many inputs as possible. Can I start with our number 1? Over there, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Straight to the point, and also bearing in mind what Ms. Manana said about how we frame what we're saying. So I'm going to be as careful as I can to say that working in the ECD sector, I'm from Seema Ramswar from To Enable Foundation, and working in the ECD sector, every step of the way, the formality-informality mix presents the most interesting problems to solve. And actually having access to what is based, reliable. So I'm just wondering, with the social compact, and I've seen the banking sector having been really powerful with switching over to biometrics, for example, and I see in the environment most centers are NPOs, and they are supported in terms of the per child support subsidy. And again, just throwing it out there that it may be an interesting avenue if they're not already at the table, to invite them to the table, to have them as encouragers of Banapile participation, encouragers, motivators, never to be seen as forceful, but they have biometrics, and movement is crazy in this space. ECD practitioners, so they might be on registration in the employ or volunteer or whatever, but people just move through the sector. Yeah. And this is maybe a good way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think number 2 is right behind you. If I may ask that we please get to the point. I'm looking at time. We don't want to leave at 7 or 8, so please try and shorten your comments or questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, Ms. Gloria. My name is Ohaisi Zedisego. I am from the Free State Department of Education, social worker in ECD. Mine is not a question. I would not question our work. I will give a compliment to the team and DBE. As a social worker within the ECD, Mema Nona and your team, I want to say to the colleagues, to share with them that coming from ECD, haven't done registration manually before this drive that we have started, or making it simple for ECDs to register. When people look at the dashboard, it may give them a little bit of questionable, ideas around the progress. We have had so much backlog during the time or the era of registration manually or using the previous system. So this has also even proven to us that ECD matrons are showing interest and they are becoming excited when they have to now register. So for me, if you are sitting here and you are saying that you are hearing, you are not making a mistake by wanting to partner with us, because we have seen that working in silos during the time of the previous system was not working for us, and it left us with so much backlog of ECDs to be registered. That is why we are here today. So you would not be making a mistake by partnering with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think the gentleman behind you. Number 3.
Okay, no, thank you very much, Program Director. My name is Joseph Mabanga from the South African National Council for the Blind. As Council for the Blind, we wanted to be part of this program, the DBE ECD program. We went as far as asking Dr. Kosi to be sent the forms to apply to participate in the forums. We did so, and we sent the forms. There was no response, just even a response and say you did not qualify, because as my principal, Mr. Tima, indicated earlier on, the the visually impaired learners, similarly to the deaf learners, are the most disadvantaged group of the learners. So we wanted to come in to assist the government in terms of stimulating the blind learners. We had the president yesterday underlying the importance of ECD, even minister. So we know it's very difficult to stimulate a blind person. We want to see blind people or blind learners becoming a mathematician, and we know the current system cannot do that. So we are left behind in many things. So if I can get an answer on our application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mabanga. Next, number 4. I think we're moving to number 4 over there. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for noting my first inputs. I want to give more recommendations, particularly around once we get to that point where we need to get people from the bronze to the silver and gold. A lot of the challenges we're going to face are going to again be at local government. So I would recommend that DBE partner with SALGA around ensuring that ECD is in local municipality IDPs, and that being a directive from the top, because it takes a lot of work and manpower to mobilize from the bottom to get representations for ECD, particularly and specifically around rezoning options and land use options. That remains one of the key challenges we have in local government. Secondly, infrastructure support. Local government has capacity to support infrastructure, upgrading existing infrastructure, building new infrastructure. Can that be in the IDPs by directive? And thirdly, access to basic services. These water, sanitation, electricity will remain a challenge, stopping people from getting to silver and gold. So we need sort of top down to direct the municipalities to represent these in their IDPs. Thank you.
Thank you for the recommendations. Number 5, lady at the back.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm Teresa Ngobese from TREE, a non-profit organization. My contribution on increasing access, I just want to mention that as it was presented that for step 1, it's online. So I just want to surface that online cannot fit everyone. I'm talking for the most deprived rural communities where we have a challenge. Even to send a WhatsApp or to receive a phone call, it's a challenge. So you need to have room for those who are in most deprived rural areas where there is no connectivity. As we talk AI, they are still far behind. So that's what I want to put to your attention, that when increasing access, there are people who are remaining behind, and we need to do something. Another contribution will be to consider izimbizo in those rural areas and involve the traditional leaders, and the traditional leaders council spaces or infrastructure to be used to facilitate this Banapile process, because those traditional leaders are the custodians of this ECD services. They have the high power and have the influence, and moreover, they have interest. So if we can consider that for bronze, it's not one size fits all, let's consider the traditional setup. And lastly, if we can also consider the field workers, because the field workers will be more user-friendly in terms of uploading from hard copy to digital systems. So to have field workers when doing Banapile, it will be certainly helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good points. And number 6, is it 6 or 7? The lady, yes, go first. And then the 2 gentlemen next to you.
All right, thank you. My name is Kulekazi Kondobola. I'm from the Eastern Cape Education. Let me thank the presentation first on Banapili. It's really exciting now that we have this Banapili registration drive, which I think will take us somewhere in these centers. But I just want to find out, do we have a way of regulating the mushrooming culture of these ECD centers? How are we managing that space so as to make sure that one day we'll be able to say we have registered all our centers and we are now building on quality and redress and inclusivity and anything and everything else that is important? Just to find out if we have a plan for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Musa Simelani, and I'm curriculum developer for the African Youth Development Fund. And our relevance has been guided by being database in our programs that are involved in youth behavior change. And so the evidence has suggested to us that if we're very serious about our job with the youth, we need to really start earlier at ECD. And so thank you, Mr. Tawochake, for your presentation. It has been an education, especially to myself. I guess my question in a very quick way, understanding that if we're serious about youth as an organization, we need to have some strategy that starts over there at ECD. How can we as an NGO get more involved? What are the needs? NGOs have been mentioned a lot during this session, but I'd like to understand what our role is and how we can best act, especially with our aligned goals of young people developing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is that our last question? Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My name is Lungas Kuman from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Again, well done on this program. I think it's an incredible project that the department is working on. I've got 3 questions. My first question is, what is the validity of the certificate, right? Is it dynamic? Will a site be able to move between the stages fairly quickly after complying with certain parameters? Secondly, I didn't hear much about playgroups. I mean, if you're talking about the issue of access, playgroups also are part of the ecosystem, right? What is the thinking about also catching them into the net as a group? And then lastly, what level of visibility is corporate CSI going to have access to this data? Because I think we also run a risk of spending where we shouldn't be spending, or almost aiming to do good but reversing what has been done. So how do we find a way to merge this data and sharing with the sector, the business sector, so that as it funds the 12.7 billion that was spent last year on CSI, that is directed to the right things and not reversing the gains that have been made?
Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over. I think some of the information that came out were comments. So Kulula, Dr. and Debogo, if you guys can summarize the questions, and let's take it from there. Do you want them to answer? Yeah. Okay. So, Ms. Banana, you are first.
Okay. I'm just trying to see, where did I write? The first question was really, thank you very much. Thank you about the biometrics input. We're going to explore that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Free State, my sister, all I can say to you is this. That's all. Okay. Ndade Joseph, I think something must have happened in terms of things falling into the cracks. I'm not sure if you have accessed it, because Dr. God said, whom you sent the forms to doesn't process registration. So, but we will work with you directly and make sure that you access the mass registration drive, and then we use that vehicle of the mass registration drive. Let's apologize that you didn't really get the kind of outcome that you were seeking, but I think it fell in between the cracks, and I don't want to think that perhaps the channels that were used, that were clearly communicated to you. Apologies about that, but we will work on it. Colleague from Tree, we are using multiple pathways, very beautiful inputs that you've made. That's exactly why we've brought NGOs into into this social compact and into this network of support. We have not just relied on technology, on WhatsApp, there's a call center, there's this, but you may say then that all of that still needs someone to have access to a digital tool and a digital resource, but we are using these tools, people, to go and interface on behalf of Banabile, and that was why we called upon NGOs to really get involved. Love the idea. When we get to particularly areas where they have traditional leadership, that we will knock on the doors of those traditional leaders and we will work very directly with them. Beautiful. And the issue around field workers, and I think that is why there was Harambe on stage yesterday, because we are looking at ways in which we can engage even youth in communities to come in and be those agents that we need. And remember, we are piloting in different contexts, and each context is going to have its different needs. But Gauteng, as a melting pot, offered us a bit of all of these kind of provinces, because you find everyone here in Gauteng. But all of those points, we're taking them into our toolkit, and we will definitely use that toolbox. Kule, question about plan for, I'm not going to repeat that mushrooming, because I think sometimes services are informed by the need. Where there's a need, where there are children, there will have to be a provision of service to support the needs of those children. But I think as part of the 2030 strategy is to look at how, and it's not happening now, someday we are going to be able to formalize the sector. But we are taking the very first step on that journey of formalizing the sector. And that's what we are doing at this point. And we are kind of shying away from being radical because we don't want to alienate anybody in the sector. And we don't want children not to have services when they need services. We found an informal sector, and we're going to work with that informal sector until all of us, we journey to a point where we can then say that we can get to a sense of comfort that all our children are being provided for with their needs. All right. Then the next set of questions, Musa, we will work with you in terms of how you contribute. Thank you very much. The social compact is actually calling for that, to say that organizations like yours, we have a space, and I think what we will do after this meeting now is to just share contact details, and we really kind of find a way in which we can tighten that up. Thank you, DBSA. Movement from one stage to the next stage, and the validity of the certificate. And I think I'm going to let Tebucho perhaps respond to that, because it's part of that the presentation that he was making. Play groups, I think when I was responding on the question of quality, I did mention that this is not just about one modality, which is the center-based modality. It's about every child accessing quality early learning opportunities. So that does include play groups. CSI, we've just had two very what's the adjective I'm looking for? Successful breakfast sessions. One including, actually both of them, they were including the private sector, the banking sector, everyone in the private sector. And what we are doing on the 17th of March is that the minister is hosting a seminar, a summit, I beg your pardon. And again, that's her opening the door to the non-state sector, particularly the industry and the private sector, to come on board and support Banabile. So what we're curating now is a modality of getting, now that we've made the call and everybody's saying, we've had the call, tell us how. How do we contribute exactly? How do we get involved? We don't need to convince us about the importance of giving children that chance to start strong. We are here. We are here with our CSI budgets. We are here as the private sector. Tell us how. So what we are curating at this point is a post these engagements, a kind of a platform that is going to allow all and the point we are making is about how do we let this, is there going to be data sharing? How are they going to know where to plug in, how to plug in? And that is something that we are developing, and we will be sharing that very widely. And we're hoping you as DBSA are concluding your issues and you're around supporting us with a specific ask to you to manage the fund for the infrastructure component that will allow all of these ECDs that we are registering at mass to have access to the health and safety packs that will allow them to move from bronze to silver and to gold. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Manona. And I know that, Ms. Manona, I know that you didn't acknowledge Tsepo's inputs because he said he's adding more recommendations. So Tsepo, we understood. We're not responding to that. Yeah.
Sorry, Tsepo. As part of the IMC, because this doesn't want to work. Oh, it is. So we are just waiting for a date of a meeting between the DG and the CEO of SALGA. So all of these points that you have raised are points that are really useful, and we understand the importance of unlocking that door, and so that is what we are doing. And also, at local level, where our colleagues at provincial level sit, it's not only the top down, but it's really to have those relationships organically starting. And I can tell you that when we went on road shows in Gauteng, what Pumi did was just to say, we're here because they've already formed those relationships. They were road showing with us, the colleagues from local government and from the municipalities. But yes, you're right, SALGA will really help us, and DG is exploring and pursuing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manona. And we've actually had municipalities also that have said we've been ready, we've been waiting, and we're ready. So, and the other way around, that has also, been a great opportunity. Just in terms of validity of the bronze certificate, the bronze registration is valid for 12 months, and the validity period is to afford the applicant to quickly move through into silver and get ready to move into silver. Otherwise, it expires. They have to start again. But also puts pressure on us as the district officials to make sure that within 12 months, we've assisted them through that particular process. So it's both ways. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Back to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Can we clap hands for everybody that has participated? This has been amazing. Without wasting time, we're going to move on to our second sub-theme. I would like us to welcome Kgopotso Khumalo from UNICEF and DBE, and she will be taking us on another journey on sub-theme 2. Over to you, Kgopotso. Can we clap hands for her?
It would be great if I see my presentation so that I don't get nervous. Is it loading? Okay, this is the one. Afternoon, everyone. Oh, there it is. Okay, cool. I'm now relaxed. Where's the pointer thingy? Excellent. Okay, wait, let me just test it a bit so that I know that I'm doing, excellent. Afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We honored, loved the first discussion on registration. And well done to the team involved, and thank you so much for the comments. I'll be focusing mostly on the curriculum part with specific reference to the learning and teaching support material. So my focus is on improving quality, equipping practitioners with the right tools. And these are the three main guiding questions, colleagues. I struggle to stand stationary. I'll try. Okay. So these are the guiding questions. What are the benefits of resource packs for ECD practitioners? What will be the most feasible way of rolling out these materials? What support will ECD practitioners require to implement these materials? I think I liked what the previous presenter, Tebogo, did to say this is an invitation. So even though these are the questions that are being posed that I hope to give clarity on, it certainly does not limit it to me responding to this, hence the social compact that's been emphasized throughout. So I do hope that at the end of my presentation, I'll do get further inputs on how to guide this even further. So just a bit of the context for the learning and teaching support material that I'll be briefly speaking through. I hope I'll save time. Is that the backdrop of the learning and teaching support material, which looks at the ages birth to 4, but we added up to 5 years, I'll explain, is that it is embedded in the national curriculum framework, and it emphasizes the idea of curriculum strengthening. So just a bit about the curriculum strengthening part, which is reflected from the learning and teaching support material that I hope to show you during my presentation, is that when we talk about curriculum strengthening, and these are not the only points, I'm just highlighting a few, is that we are making our curriculum contextually relevant. I know some of us know the experience of learning. It doesn't matter at what age, and you're learning something, but it's something that's very abstract because you cannot relate to it. And I think the idea of strengthening the curriculum using learning and teaching support material as a vehicle, one of the vehicles, is to make it contextually relevant. Embedding playful approaches. I know that in the plenary, that's one of the things that came up, especially when we're looking at the early childhood development sector, because play becomes almost like the foundation of what we do, or one of the areas. Another part in terms of curriculum strengthening is the idea of equipping learners, children, with appropriate competencies, skills, and knowledge for lifelong learning. And these are just other stuff that are reflected under curriculum strengthening, the idea of laying foundational skills. When you talk about learners who are competent to do mathematics, science, it doesn't matter where they are. When we talk about preparing learners for future careers, as our Deputy Minister mentioned in the earlier plenary, it starts here, and not just at one, but at conception, as we always say. And we're also talking about providing developmentally appropriate learning experiences. And I think this is an important consideration, especially coming from our plenary yesterday, and also just conversations that have extended even today, is the idea of individual needs and variations. So this is quite brief. A bit of the context of the early learning programs, which I know because I'm with experts and learned colleagues, you can add to this. Just a few points is the ECD workforce being vulnerable, women under-resourced, the list is under-resourced, the list is endless. The fact that a lot of our early learning programs rely on fees for their survival, and this part which speaks to what I'm referring, or I'll be touching on in my presentation, is the fact that a lot of the early learning programs that we mentioned do not have a defined curriculum. And in some contexts, there's still a focus on babysitting, which we appreciate, but obviously there's more to stimulation through curriculum, through resources, and obviously through the workforce that my colleague will be touching on after. And again, just to emphasize that many practitioners might not have the relevant skills and competencies, but this does not take away from the fact that if you are to talk about early learning programs as an umbrella term, but go to an ECD specifically as a center, even in contexts where there are no resources, we've seen through how practitioners are able to make use of what they have to teach. And so it does not take away from the existing knowledge and abilities of our practitioners or the ECD workforce in general. So this was just to touch on the context. And just briefly, all of this work, the learning and teaching support material being the operationalization of the National Curriculum Framework is embedded in several policies. I won't speak too much on this because of time, but as you can see, we do have our constitution, almost like as the basis, and on the top right, if you remember the National Curriculum Framework, which looks at all the elders and how we can develop our children holistically. Okay. Also the parenting program. But this has been emphasized, and I love this, because when we speak about the policies that embed the strengthening of the curriculum, which is important in not just creating access, as Ms. Manona said, but ensuring quality, it's also embedded in our shared vision and mission. Access to quality, ECD, prioritizing vulnerable children, but obviously all children. And again, just a definition in terms of universal access and what it means. It's a right mix of available ECD programs or early learning initiatives that meet the needs of families and children in the community. And this is an important point, because if you're talking about children from conception all the way to, let's say, 4, which is our area of expertise, obviously ECD refers to all the way to 9 years, we do know that we might have children who are birth to 2, who are not necessarily in the centers, but they still require a kaleidoscope of services, and maybe this comes in the form of parenting programs or in the health sector in terms of them getting the right stimulation. So that was just a point for me to emphasize. Okay, just a bit on the social compact that I know has been touched on, so I don't think it's important, but just the idea that the child is at the center and it's a lot of partners involved in ensuring that children get an array of services. So this is why we're here in terms of my presentation. The need for NCF LTSM. So when the learning and teaching support material, and I need to make a note that this does not assume that there are no existing or other learning resources that are used in centers or early learning programs, because we know that programs or early learning centers, if you speak of the ECD, are able to use various resources. But if we speak about the NCF LTSM specifically, it's about the implementation of the National Curriculum Framework. I'm not sure if colleagues are aware of the study that was done with Lego Foundation, where they were looking at, one of the things they were looking at is the implementation of the NCF. And when the study was conducted, a lot of the practitioners were saying, we do have this framework, and obviously a framework is a guiding tool. It's not a strict, rigid curriculum. It's what you can refer to. But a lot of the practitioners were saying, Tina or us, we don't know how to implement this. And that is one of the reasons why we've got the learning and teaching support material, because it speaks to the implementation of the National Curriculum Framework. In terms of the NCF LTSM that I'll be speaking to, it's the idea of improving quality teaching and learning in early learning programs. So as I said in the first few slides, is that a lot of the centers, if you're speaking about centers as an example of an early learning program, you might find that they start the day, maybe children eat breakfast, but there's no formal curriculum which looks at stimulating children differently, gross, fine, numeracy, literacy, etc. So this is also about improving the quality of early learning and teaching, which has also come up in the plenary. Another one, effective stimulation of children birth to 4, the idea of also scaffolding, how you developmentally add more and more, looking at the age or the ability of the child that you have, and providing a bespoke amount of strategies to assist with that. And I think I also like this point on play being at the core of learning. Obviously, it's not the only strategy. So, okay, while I press even more. Excellent, sorry colleagues. Apologies for that. So when it comes to the development of the learning and teaching support material, we speak about the social compact, which means all of us are involved, but I think it's important to make specific reference to the Department of Basic Education and its leadership. UNICEF and ASHU are also largely involved in this. So those were that was the partnership, but in terms of just other parts that form part of the development of the NCF LTSM is the fact that it goes hand in hand with the NCF, as I've mentioned. It's the idea of the pedagogy of play and other pedagogies of course, and the idea of pedagogy is also informing the methodology that is being used by our practitioners. And I think another part which has been, I think Dr. Kotze put it beautifully, about how inclusion is almost like a thread throughout, is the idea that with the LTSM, the attempt is to integrate sound principles to facilitate gender equality, diversity, inclusion of children with disabilities, and other related matters. So these are like guiding principles that informed the development of our LTSM, which informs or forms part of the strengthening curriculum component. This came up in the discussion earlier in terms of, is it just ECD? But this is just to emphasize the point that when we talk about the learning and teaching support material, we're also looking at resources that can be used across different settings. As you can see, ECD centers being almost like a common example, but you also have toy libraries, parent support, child minders, play groups, and I'm sure there could be other examples that could be added here as well. Okay, so now I've given a bit of background on in terms of why we're here, especially on my part of the presentation on curriculum strengthening, with the learning and teaching support material being an example. So I'm gonna move quickly, grab a few things and come back, so bear with me, ne? So colleagues, you have an opportunity to look at these materials. So you're not allowed to keep it, but you can certainly have a look. So this is just to give you an overview of what is included in the learning and teaching support material. Remember when we mentioned at the beginning that it's about improving quality, right? And increasing access. And the emphasis is on practitioners, in whatever setting, or the ECT workforce, or even parents, having access to learning and teaching support material, which they can use in terms of stimulating their children. So in terms of the learning and teaching support material specifically that I'm referring to, we've got learning material that is divided according to 5 age cohorts. So we've got one for birth to 1, we've got 1 to 2, we've got 2 to 3, we've got 3 to 4, and then 4 to 5. That's the transition to formal schooling. And when we talk about the learning and teaching support material, this is what is included. A practitioner manual, and in about 2 slides, I'll just take you through what has been done so that you have also another aspect of the implementation thereof, or the development thereof. So there's a practitioner manual with 20 themes. If you think about an early learning program, if you enter an ECD specifically, you'll find that at times children are doing a specific theme, like my body, healthy eating, or seasons. So this is what we came up with. It was 20 themes. Something to mention that the themes are the same for all the age cohorts. However, depending on the age, there is scaffolding and development. So what you find for children birth to 1 will not be what you find at 4 to 5, even though the themes are the same. And with the 20 themes, colleagues, I've been given a note of 5 minutes. I'll try to be quick. With the themes with the 20 themes, each theme is done over 2 weeks. And I think something that is exciting for us is one of the themes is STEAM, for example, and I know that it's been an emerging theme across even on day 1, the idea of science, technology, and engineering, and it's fascinating to see how it can be operationalized for young kids or babies as well. We also have our big books, which is a reading tool. So we've got big books as well. So with the big books, the practitioner is able to hold up a book with a few prompts, and the idea is to facilitate play-based learning with children. You also have posters, and the posters are based on specific themes. I've got one on robots. I've got one on robots and rockets. And again, like I said, colleagues, feel free to come and look at the material when you have a chance. So this is just an example of one of the posters for 2 to 3-year-olds. The teacher is able to have a plan for Monday to Friday, and each day has specific questions. And the idea of the posters is also make the questions interactive between the practitioner and the children. Then you also have the resource books, which is additional resources that a practitioner, and I'm using the ECD as an example, resources that a practitioner can use in addition to whatever they might have in the classroom when they are teaching. So for robots and rockets, maybe it's foil and other things. We also have an observation guide and 6 short videos as well as freezers. So this is just what is included. And the idea is that even though there are 20 themes, but we do acknowledge that our practitioners have agency and they might use it in a number of ways or in creative ways. But at least it does give them a daily program on what to use and when to use it and how to use it across the 20 themes. So these are just examples of our practitioner manuals. I'm going to go through this quite quickly. These are the resource books, which we have, and these are taken from the different age cohorts. You also have posters per theme, and one example is clothing, colors, and designs, seasons, my senses, etc. The big books that I mentioned for the different themes. Freezers that a practitioner can put in their classroom, for example, a height chart, which they can find pleasure in measuring the child's height and making it playful. Okay. We also have an observational sheet, which looks at tracking each child's developmental milestone so that a practitioner is able to provide the necessary guidance and support. Just briefly, I'll try to do this in 2 minutes. What has been achieved with the learning and teaching support material that I tried or attempted to demonstrate, we tested it in 3 provinces, in KwaZulu-Natal, in Limpopo, and Northwest. The reason for doing it in the 3 provinces was to ensure that we also have a rural and a different context to Gauteng, but also looking at rural context as well, but also understanding that there'll be different languages spoken, and also understanding how the practitioner in an early learning center is able to use this and find comments and feedback from the practitioners themselves. Besides the piloting that I'm mentioning here, which was done with officials, we also did a peer review of the learning and teaching support material. Some of the things we focused on is the material, the learning and teaching support material, aligned to NCF? Does it facilitate inclusion or inclusive practices? And is there scaffolding involved? And just recently in January, I know that some of my colleagues who are here were also part of that. We also had a curriculum strengthening workshop with officials from all 9 provinces to get feedback on the learning and teaching support material. One of the comments that came up, which I think it's important to emphasize, is that for the posters, we needed to ensure that the material is also, and excuse me if I'm using the right terminology, proliferated, so that even if I'm visually impaired, I'm able to touch and feel so that the material is truly inclusive. The review of feedback and consolidation is underway. And in terms of the next phases, so once this is done, we will be doing quality assurance. No, sorry, we've done that. We'll be doing versioning of our material in all the official languages. I'm explaining this, trying to press, but it's not moving. Okay, let's see it here. Okay. Awesome. Now it's moving. So the next part is versioning of LTSM in all the different languages. Apologies for that, colleagues. Then there'll be a rollout, and I think guidance will be required here. We acknowledge that it will be a bespoke model, district model, partners, civil society, and different actors involved. But because we are in a room with different experts, it will also be interesting just to add to ideas on how this can be done effectively, taking into consideration that we want to ensure that all our centers or early learning programs have the necessary resources to use for their children. Then there'll be training, which is a multi-pronged approach, as well as printing and distribution. And again, distribution will be a phase approach with specific focus on also the most vulnerable. So these are the next parts, but I'm just going to conclude. I know I've run out of time. So just to conclude, the success of the LTSM rollout is dependent on partnership. As you can see, LTSM, or Learning and Teaching Support Material, is one of the fundamental ways to improve quality early learning programs while equipping practitioners with the right tools. And this is another one, is that a knowledgeable and trained ECD workforce is able to provide the quality that we need. I try to stick to time, and apology to my chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kopotso Shem. I know you were pressed for time. I'm going to now request that we move swiftly. I'm not going to take a round of questions now. Please note them. We're going to have our last presentation for the day, and then we will ask all the questions. So please note all your questions for this sub-theme. We will give you a chance to ask those particular questions. So our next sub-theme will be run by Ms. Valencia Chilwani. I think she's ready. And then it will be based on improving quality, well-supported ECD programs. Please let's give her a round of applause as we welcome her. Over to you, ma'am. So you have 15 minutes.
I actually got a lot. Good evening. Thank you so much for choosing the ECD Commission. I must say you're placing your children first and all our children first. So we'd just like to acknowledge the fact that we recognize that you had a choice and you chose us. So thank you. As introduced, I'll be speaking towards the discussion around improving quality well-supported ECD programs. So our objective, as you would have seen in the guideline, is to focus on strengthening early childhood development for improved learning in later years. Outcomes, concretizing the social compact for ECD to jointly achieve the goal of increasing access to quality ECD programs. And I think we need to start at the beginning. Quality is defined in terms of context, which is appropriate to those who engage in it. Internationally, and this is in terms of the International Standard 9001 of 2015, there are 7 key principles in terms of quality management. That includes customer focus, leadership, engagement of people, process approach, improvement, evidence-based decision-making, and relationship management. You will see that in terms of the processes that we've undergone and per the case studies that we have received, that each of these principles have been embedded. Furthermore, you're welcome to scan the QR code. We felt it was important on the basis of the question that was posed during the plenary discussion yesterday, that we concretize where and how the early learning outcome measurements tools were developed and why they are contextually sound in terms of the quality frameworks that we have used. I think it's also important that we indicate that the tools would serve another important purpose. Considerable amounts of money were being spent by donors and government, and I think that speaks to the bank question earlier, on supporting early learning programs, but did they work? If we could measure programs' effectiveness, then we could also use the measurement instrument to enable programs to fill gaps in children's learning outcomes, numeracy through appropriate program design, equipment, and stimulation. And we've just received a presentation by my learned colleague, Khoputso. I think it's also important that we recognize that in terms of the ELOM process, of its design, the quality standard of the ECD ELOM instrument is provided in the technical manual. Once again, you are welcome to scan the code or use the search engine that you prefer to get access to the document. We developed the ELOM program in terms of our Save the Children International Development and Early Learning Assessment tool, our Direct Assessment Manual devised for the Measuring Early Learning Quality and Outcomes initiative, and the Zambian Child Assessment Test. Our tool is for the South African context. It's for the South African child. And we have got international insights where they are saying, how can we start this conversation to establish in terms of the work that we're doing and its relation or correlation to the work that you have. Recognizing the various discourses in terms of international standards and its assessments, we are very clear in terms of putting our children first. And when we say we're putting our children first, we are referring to the child in South Africa who is in the context of South Africa. The mobility and the international opportunities will follow in later years. Right now, it's about the South African child and the child who is accessing early learning programs in South Africa. Having positioned how we understand quality standards in terms of the international discourse, as well as how our tool in terms of the South African setting has been defined, we felt that it was important that we bring forth the conversation around performance standards for ECD programs and ECD practitioners. So the department established a human resource development task team in 2022. And last week we had an opportunity where we discussed the various items in terms of what workforce planning looks like in what we've termed a quasi-market. And one of the points that we made was standards for measuring and monitoring the performance of practitioners in their work environments are also required, as well as other elements to enhance the working conditions of practitioners. And I think that's a vital point because in the plan we provide opportunities to repurpose defined standards, to set performance standards that the DBE would develop regarding equitable access, quality provisioning, and improve childhood outcomes. These performance standards may result in a metrics for recognition of early learning programs. They may lead to upward mobility in terms of the international standards, classification of occupations, in terms of how they have defined care service managers, early childhood educators, and child care workers for consideration in the South African early childhood development landscape. The next question we had posed to us is, could a professional endorsement framework be helpful? As presented earlier, we have established the Human Resource Development Task Team, and the body of work provided through the support of VVOB and the fund team developed the professional endorsement framework as a significant step towards empowering early childhood development educators. Its aim was to broaden the definition of professional ECD educator, recognizing the value of field experience and skills outside formal qualifications, which have traditionally been overlooked. And I think this is an important point, particularly around the presentation that our Deputy Minister for Higher Education presented, and the discourse of OECD in terms of skills and the opportunities of skills development as a defining approach, as an alternative to what we understand the academic qualifications to be. The framework outlines how early learning workforce can be integrated into inclusive development, professional pathway, providing access to qualification routes and merging established and flexible ways for pre-service and service ECD educators. Given the complexity of the ECD professionalization, the Human Resource Development Task Team will propose a shift from the PEF to an early workforce recognition framework. This approach aligns with the global discussions on access to professional status and national requirements, making our early learning workforce part of a larger movement. The direction strongly emphasizes promoting inclusivity as a social justice principle. As Dr. Kotze advised, everything we do is based on our social justice principles and anchored in inclusivity. And this is the Early Learning Workforce Recognition Framework. We recognize, in terms of inclusivity, that we have a workforce based on the census data that would particularly find themselves within the embarking lens, and these are those who have a qualification below an NQF level 4. We have a progressing early learning workforce, and this we would define as category B, and these are professionals with an NQF level 4 qualification. I might add that in terms of the literature in the landscape of South Africa, NQF level 4 has been deemed the qualification and can be taken back to 2001 in terms of the first statements that were made in this regard. And then the advancing early learning workforce would be deemed category C, and this would include those that qualify for admission into a qualification for a higher certificate, a diploma, or bachelor route. Recommendations to get the early learning workforce category registered with an appropriate body include input examples for the development of a portfolio of evidence of the early learning workforce pathway. This may include verified years of experience, certificated skills programs, role of occupational qualifications in early childhood development, non-credit bearing small units of learning in terms of SAQA, our micro-credentials that POMISA has delivered on, coaching and mentoring as an opportunity to deliver quality on a needs-based intervention and further development in terms of self-directed learning. And then we have aspects such as our Early Childhood Development Institute in Mpumalanga, our resource and training organizations, as well as our higher education institutions. What we'd like to see is the sector supporting us, where we put out a call for a national recognition of prior learning framework for the early learning workforce. We are saying we're placing our children first. We're very clear on what we are asking. It's for the early learning workforce. There may be lobby groups, there may be negotiations, there may be discussions in terms of complexities in other sectors. We are focusing on our children, and by that we are focusing on the workforce. And we do believe that this is an opportunity to see aspects such as our social justice principle of inclusivity really being operationalized, where you can see it in action and not just read it and wait for it to happen. We also recognize that in terms of our micro-credential system, which includes micro-learning, or is at the base of micro-learning, we'd like to see the options of stackables being considered, as well as mobilization of these credentials in terms of articulation that would be horizontal, vertical, diagonal. But we would require a systemic rather than localized institutional level of implementation. I think it's also important that we emphasize that our early learning workforce categories would be based on the role of practice standards in the recognition of prior learning. And this framework seeks to ensure that there's ongoing training and development that leads to improved childhood outcomes. It's about the child. In terms of the work we want to do, we want to see those childhood outcomes improved. So when we talk about skills, when we talk about micro-learning, when we talk about micro-credentials, we want to see the child's outcomes improve. So that when we talk about our ELOM tool, we know that everything that we have done, we have placed our child at the center of the discourse. Would the quality assurance and support system be helpful? Definitely. I think in terms of the quality conversation that we've been having, recognizing where we come from, the ECD course of 2021 presents two variables, structural quality variable, and hence we have the Banapili mass legislation drive, and process quality variables, such as our LTSM, as well as the workforce development. And we'd like to see this within a continuum towards a quality system, where we would recognize the regulated minimum requirements in terms of registration, professional requirements, as well as sector quality standards, quality assurance, and support, not just quality assurance. Support is the base of all interventions. We do not believe that we will get into any conversation with the sector and not show up from a form of support. Care, inclusivity, the most vulnerable conversation that needs to happen is we need to feel safe and trusted as we engage in these very complex conversations. Further work has happened in terms of mapping the quality assurance and support system domains against the early learning workforce practice standards. What are the challenges that we need to solve? We've used an appreciative inquiry approach to strategic planning, which starts by focusing on strengths of an organization and its stakeholders' values and shared vision, resulting in strategic inquiry with an appreciative intent. We are not speaking about weaknesses. We are not speaking about threats. We're instead speaking about strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. We want to join this conversation embedded by the social compact and see that each challenge, as we may identify it, has its strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. In terms of building collaborative foundations, we recognize the existing partnerships and collaboration across national, provincial, and local government levels. Our aspiration is to strengthen the integrated intersectoral forum that drives strategic shared goals and actions, and I think real reform has raised that. System integration for stronger synergy. We recognize that albeit that we may have fragmented systems, our commitment to improvement reassures us for a better future. And our aspiration is to create a harmonized response practice. Our strength is that the early learning workforce strive to improve even without formalized standards and commitments. And our aspirations is that a workforce that implements practice standards that enables quality service delivery. Continuing professional development in the form of training efforts demonstrates a willingness to invest in workforce development. And our